Now, back to the random stuff. We got 24 randos left. What's our next roll? It's going to be 24. Fly Me to the Moon Season 2. Alrighty then. Another sequel that I'm super hyped for. Let's go. Yep. That was just about as comfy and wholesome as it was last time. I just finished all of Season 2 of Tonikawa, Fly Me to the Moon. Well, actually, I just realized that recently, is that the localization for the manga is slightly different than the anime. The manga is localized as Fly Me to the Moon. The anime is localized as Over the Moon for You, presumably because of the name of the song. Because copyright is weird. But speaking of copyright, that was one of the things about this particular season of Season 2. I guess I'll just roll right into it. Is this might be the anime that butts up against other copyrighted content the most from anything that I've seen. And I've seen all of Gintama. So, like, there's some where it's like it makes sense, where it's like there's one where it just straight up uses the main characters from Hayate the Combat Butler. I'm like, that makes sense. It's the same author. So that makes sense. And then there's some where like really like they are really testing the waters of how close can we get to saying Yuru Camp without saying Yuru Camp. And then I think there was just a moment where they just straight up had Detective Conan on screen, I think. It was some kind of Shonen Sunday property where it was like, okay, that also kind of makes sense, but this is the anime adaptation, this isn't the manga. Like, I've read the manga, like, quite a lot of the manga, actually. So I know that it already does that, and it's a lot easier to get away with that in manga than it is in anime, but the anime's really testing the limits of that in some really fun ways. So that was fun. But aside from that, yeah, this was pretty much just the same as the first season, which came out like 3 years ago, apparently. I thought it was even longer than that, but it's been a while. And again, I'm also like super far ahead in the manga. Like, I just checked on my shelf, season 2. Not counting the second part of season 2. For some reason, there was like a 4-part thing in the summer season that for some reason I decided to just leave for the summer season wrap-up show. We'll get to that eventually. But this first part of season 2, for some reason, like, it just ended at this specific point. And it ended like halfway through volume 11 of the manga. And I've already read up through volume 20 of the manga. So it is very weird to go back and see like how the slight differences in how the characters are compared to where they are later in the manga. It's not huge changes, but there are like some pretty notable changes. Like, I've already hit the point with like the totally obvious plot twist happens in the manga, and I'm well past that at this point. And the anime still hasn't even gotten to that point yet, which, if this gets a season 3, I presume that is where that will happen. If you don't know what the totally obvious plot twist is, you probably are not watching the show. But I will definitely be interested in seeing how they adapt that. But I think I said for better or worse that these characters only slightly have changed, really, because that's one of the main complaints about this series that I see from a lot of people, is that even though they have been married for several months now, I think at this point, they're still like immensely shy and timid and embarrassed about their relationship in terms of like intimacy. But they still go through with the intimacy in a lot of places. So I don't think it's it's weird. Like it tries to have its rom-com embarrassment while also being a post-marriage rom-com. I don't think it's totally out of place, but there are some moments where it does start to wear out its welcome a little bit. But aside from that, this is still a decently funny show. All of the comedic moments, well, most of the comedic moments hit pretty well. And it had some, like, decently interesting philosophical discussions about marriage and what that means. We got that one big moment in near the end of season 1 about marriage and its relationship to love, and then we got a little bit more of that expounded on in season 2 about the, like, sort of the historical ideas about marriage. Obviously, it leaves out the less romantic parts about marriages being contracts for a good portion of history. But the sentiment overwhelmed my historical brain. So that was there. I had another thought about the story, I think. I swear I had another thought about the story. Dang it. It left my head immediately. Oh, that's what it was. Not necessarily about the story, but I think this series is doing something that at least me personally, having completed over 1,000 anime, have not seen. Well, 1,000 anime according to Mal, so multiple seasons, whatever, you get the gist. But it's doing something that anime really doesn't do a lot, ever. Like, almost never. Is, like, it really goes into, like, what does it mean to just be married to someone? What does it mean to share your life with someone? Now, this is definitely a much rosier, very extremely conflict-free version of that, but it's still very, it evokes that feeling in a certain way. And I had the fortune of the timing of this coming up with how this came up in my random number generator stuff. I watched, like, the first 3 episodes on my phone while I was in a hotel room waiting for one of my friends from college to get married. So, like, I watched the first few episodes of that, and then I went and saw her get married and then have the reception. It was really fun. Just seeing seeing the fiction version and then jumping to the real life version made me go, like, there is something special here. Like, this is, like, could it be overhyped to a certain degree? Yes, but there is still something, like, monumental about deciding to permanently share your life with someone. To be like, I'm gonna go for broke, you're my person that I want to spend the rest of my life with. And I think this series does a good job of delving into that. I think that is what this series does above all else that I think makes it really special. Despite the fact that this is really not an incredible adaptation. Like, I'm going to be honest, if the premise was not this interesting, I probably would have dropped this show back in season 1, because this show does not look great. It doesn't look bad. It's not, well, there are some moments where it's a little off-putting. Like, the color design could definitely use some work. I think a lot of that is holdover from the color design of the manga also not being incredible, but the way the post-processing of it all, the way the the director of photography approaches everything, the way the color designer's approaching everything. It's not the best looking show. It's stomachable. It's palatable, but you're not going to find any, like I saw, like, in the entirety of these 12 episodes, I saw one good animation cut. And I'm not saying that you need Sakuga to make a show look good, but that is the kind of show that this is. It is a very people talking kind of show. Now, it does supplement this with, like, good comedic visual presentation, like the way that certain characters are, like, chibied and, like, super deformed, the way that their facial expressions work, and also the voice acting is really solid too. I wasn't totally digging Tokiko's voice actress at first, but I think the more I listened to it, the more it fit with what my personal vision of the character and what that character is supposed to be. Tokiko being the old lady who is Tsukasa's guardian. So the comedic elements, what the show is about, and, like, the audio definitely carries this series through some not particularly impressive visuals. Again, I don't think it looks outright bad, but it is definitely mediocre. And that's why, like, for as much as I was in love with the first season, even that season, I don't think I gave it, like, a strong 7 at most, just because the animation was not particularly great, and it has not improved. I don't think it's going to improve ever, because this is just what the show looks like now. So that's a bit of a shame, but it's also not adapting particularly complex designs either. The manga is really simple looking, and the manga is carried by the comedic banter, the chemistry between the characters, and the philosophical ideas about marriage. So all of those are there. So if you like that, go ahead and keep watching it. If you saw the first season and you were skeptical, and if you haven't seen it yet, give it a go. I still think it's a pretty decent series, but you're not gonna get anything visually spectacular. Alright, Tonikawa Season 2 is complete. We're gonna scroll up here, and we're gonna put it right under the second SAO progressive movie in the number 17 spot with a decent 7. A bit lower on the list than some other things recently, but you know what? I still enjoyed myself. Alright, so now we've got 23 randos left. Let's see what the random number generator picks next. 2. What is 2? Mashle. Okay. It's a Shonen Jump gag fantasy manga. I've read a little bit of the manga, so let's see how the anime does. Yeah, you know what? That's about what I expected, considering that I dropped the manga less than 3 volumes in. So I got through about an episode and a half, or a little under that, of Mashle. I don't hate it, but I just find it aggressively unfunny. And it's a gag series first and foremost, so the fact that I do not find it funny, I don't think I need to say much more than that. Which is a shame, because it's not a poorly produced show. I do like that the color design has a little bit of grit to it. The colors are a little flatter than usual. Tries to make, if I found the show funny, I thought it would make, that would definitely complement it. And I think the character designs are decent for a gag manga. I think the colors are pleasing to look at, and the action is pretty decent. I just do not find this funny at all. I don't know what much more to say than that. Like, I feel like like if this had more of a Konosuba style of humor, maybe, where like the gag happened and then there was just kind of like a little bit of like silent disdain at Mashle doing something fucking ridiculous instead of just everyone like screaming all the time. I just can't. We're moving on. Alright, Mashle off the list. So we're down to 22 randoms now. Next winner is 10. My One-Hit Kill Sister. I've never heard of this one. Probably some kind of fantasy. Maybe? Let's find out. Yeah, not good. This one's not good. I got about a half episode into this one. My first clue that this was probably not going to be the best show was that it had like a cold open flash forward like action scene. And it was letterboxed at first. But the bars for the letterboxing weren't black. They were like a dark gray color. So it was just kind of distracting. Which was definitely a forecast of this show's color design to come. Because this show doesn't look good at all. Like, a lot of it had like this weird green tint to it. It just made it look kind of sickly and gross. The main character is annoying as hell. He's just kind of a fucking dork. And I'll give it credit. The action scenes were ambitious. I'll give it credit for that. They're not good, but it was ambitious. There was an attempt to have a really flashy action scene with a lot of cool Sakuga in it, but the actual animation was really rough and bad. So, A for effort. But no, we're not watching any more of this. This is not good. Alright, One-Hit Kill Sister is off the list. Crank down the random number generator and see what we roll next. 5. Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible. Okay, I'm a big fan of the manga for this one. So let's watch another rom-com. Alright, that's another fun little rom-com in the books. I just finished all of Kubo Won't Let Me Be Invisible. This is another one where I've been reading the manga for a while. I am up to date on all of the English releases, which is up through volume 10, so there's still 2 more left before the manga ends. But interesting thing about this show is the anime ended like the anime was supposed to end right around the same time that the manga ended, at the end of the winter season. But this was one of quite a few anime from the winter season, if I recall, that had what I could only describe as total production collapses. So it ended up, I think it got through like, 5 episodes or something? I'm not quite sure how many it got through. And then it eventually just got delayed to the spring season. And, I'll be honest, it kind of shows. Now to be fair, a lot of this show looks really good. There is some really strong character artwork in this, a lot of really strong, color design and lighting, some really good stuff in it. But this is definitely an instance of a show cutting corners in all the right places. Because, you know how, when an anime will do, especially, a comedy anime, will do, chibi cutaways for, gags and stuff? In this show, those cutaways are in such a drastically different art style that it becomes, it's not jarring, but it's like, oh, that's a little unexpected. I don't mind it because it still looks pretty okay, but it's a little bit threw me off a little bit. And then I remembered, oh right, this show got delayed because of production collapse. So I was like, that's probably why that was the place to cut corners. So I'm glad they figured that out. And also there were very few instances of this, but the few bits of CG that I saw were pretty not good. So definitely cut some corners there. But aside from that, really liked the general presentation of the show. Really strong lighting choices. Really solid work on Kubo's character design. She is obviously the star of the show. Not the main protagonist, but definitely the star, because this is one of those teasing rom-coms, as I like to call them. And it's the same vein of stuff like Takagi-san and Nagatoro, those kind of shows. This is in that vein, but this is definitely like probably like the most laid back, I guess, of those. This was one that definitely tries to have like the most ambiance to it of all of the ones that I've seen so far. So I really enjoyed that. Kubo is just always immensely cute and adorable, whether she's teasing or embarrassed or whatever is going on in the scene. That priorities. Just like a little detail, like her pupils are like kind of square shaped, and I just thought that was kind of cool. It felt very distinct. I'm pretty sure I've seen that from other shows in the past, but I really liked it here. But visuals aside, I think this is just a generally pretty decent rom-com. It can get a little bit not laborious, but a little like repetitive, I guess, sometimes. Just because it's cramped. The chapters of the manga, if I recall, are fairly short. Like, especially some of the later chapters. Like, I don't recall how long the early chapters were, but like in some of the more recent volumes, the chapters are only like 10 to 12 pages long. In some instances. So it does often have a lot of content in a single episode. But I think, in general, it paces everything out pretty well. Like, for the most part, everything's paced out pretty well. All the characters are super fun and adorable. Whether it's Kubo's siblings or Shiraishi's younger brother, all the students that they interact with. Just this general, like, warm vibe to it. It's never unpleasant to watch what's happening. So I definitely got to commend it for that. I was also expecting it to like maybe go a little farther in the manga, because typically when a manga ends and an anime end together, when they end together, technically they didn't, but they were supposed to end together. Typically when that happens, it's the anime reaches the end at the same time that the manga reaches the end, so that they have a little bit of symmetry there. Like if I recall, Your Lie in April did that. But this actually only got through about a third of the manga. I think it got through like the first 4 volumes. Which, looking back on it, good plan, because if they had tried to rush everything to the end, this probably would not have been a very good show. Yeah, I have a lot less to say about this one than I expected, I guess. I do want to say that the soundtrack is pretty decent for this one. All audio, like, the entire audio was all really solid for this one. Like there's a particular like clarinet and piano piece that I thought was really nice, just very soothing and relaxing. And the soundtrack can go a little overboard sometimes, but in general it fits the vibe pretty well. And the voice acting is really solid. Obviously, Kana Hanazawa as Kubo was just pitch perfect for her character. Really nailed the nuances of Kubo's character. I forgot what the guy's name was who plays Shiraishi. I think it's Kengo something. But I was surprised at how much I liked his performance too. Like, it fits like the very like plain-ish kind of dude character, but he also like, especially early on, he has a little bit of a patheticness to his voice kind of, which matches like how introverted Shiraishi is at the beginning of the show. So I liked that. I don't get to talk about voice acting very often in this because there's typically the voice, like there's a lot of good voice acting, but it typically doesn't get a lot of chance to shine in a lot of the shows that I see. So it's nice when it like really stands out. And this is a show that definitely relies on its voice acting too. Like, you want this to sound pleasant. And so, yeah, that's what we got out of it. This was a very pleasant show. If you like the teasing rom-coms, like I mentioned before, and you want one that's in a very relaxed vein, that's just gonna get some mild chuckles out of you here and there, while just being very visually and auditorily pleasant throughout its whole run. You'll probably like this one. I'm excited for the manga to finally finish. I think the last volume comes out in the US in April, I think. So looking forward to that. But in any case, let's figure out where to put this one on the list. Alright, Kubo is complete. And we're going to slide it right under Tonikawa, actually, in the number 18 spot for now, with a decent 7. Just a fun little rom-com with some good vibes. And now, back to some random stuff. We're going to do 2 more randoms for this video before we jump to our next end cap. Next one is 10. Why Raeliana ended up at the Duke's mansion. I've seen this title around before, but I've never heard anyone talk about it. So let's give it a go. Oof magoof, this show's got some animation issues. It's I don't know what you would call it, but for lack of a better term, the draw distance is not great on this show. The character designs very quickly deform the further and further they get from the camera. And the animation is very hit and miss. Like, there was one scene fairly early on. I didn't get very far into this. I watched like less than half the first episode because the show's so not good looking. Like, there was one point where a maid like stutters onto frame, and it's just it's like a fucking jump scare. And then like the same thing happens later where it's like a shot of feet walking across the floor, and the floor looks stuttery. Like it's like they don't understand how to make things move smoothly. So that's like a huge knock against it. Also, not liking the narrative so far at all. Like, it's implied, I think it's implied that some supernatural thing caused the main character to get isekai'd. Oh, by the way, it's an isekai. I forgot about that. I got so distracted by everything else that was bad about this show that I forgot that the isekaiing itself was bad. It's implied that there's some kind of like magical or supernatural element that pushes her off a building. Why was she on the building in the first place? Was she already suicidal? They don't say that. She's just kind of on top of a building, and you're kind of left to assume that, I guess. But then she doesn't commit suicide. Someone pushes her off instead. It's implied to be something... whatever. Slightly annoying, but more annoying is how once this show gets going, it just throws so much exposition at you about this world that this girl got isekai'd into, and I just do not care at all, because this character has no personality. And it's like, I just thought this was so funny. It's like, there's a shot where it's like, it shows the character's dad in this isekai world, and she's like, this is this guy. He's the dad. He got into oil money, so he's nouveau rich. And then it cuts to the mom, and it says nothing. And then it cuts back to her doing some other kind of exposition. I'm like, the mom can't even get exposition. Now, you could imply that that is sort of like the idea of like, oh, that's just how women were treated in this day. But this is a female protagonist doing this narration. So, she would... You get my point. This show's bad. Let's move on.
Alright, Raeliana is coming off the list. And what are we at now? 19? Yeah, we're going to do one more random before we jump to our end caps. So let's see what we roll. It is... Come on. 2. What is that? Dead Mount Death Play. Okay, this is the probably edgy show based on the title that was written by Ryogo Narita, I think, of Bakano and Durarara. So anyone's gambit whether this is good or not. Let's figure it out.
Okay, I watched way more of that than I needed to, by which I mean half an episode. Absolutely miserable time the whole time. Mostly because solely because I knew that opening scene was not what the show was actually about. But speaking of that opening scene, garbage. Total clusterfuck of uninteresting action scenes. Just, it's not fun. It's not fun. Maybe if I was like 18, I would think that this is fun. Like baby's first edgy anime, I guess. But like, I know what 80s anime are like. Those are fun. Like, I was watching the blood sprays and the limb severing and the blood sprays and the stabbing and the blood sprays and the blood sprays, and all that came to mind was that one, I forget which video it was, but it was a Demolition D video where he was like, maybe I've forgotten how to have fun. Do I still have fun? And then he played this horrifically graphic action scene, and he goes, nope, still got it. And it made me think of that, because like, what I just watched was not gory. There's no like internal organs. You don't see bones. You don't see intestines. You don't see like viscera. You don't see muscle fibers. All you see is blood sprays. And I hate it. I hate that kind of gore. And I know why it's like that, because broadcast regulations, obviously. That doesn't make it good, though. That doesn't make it acceptable. And it's weird because it's like there was one shot where you do see like actual innards. Like you see the severed neck of a dragon and you're like, okay, that's that's closer to what I want. Give me more of that. And then like shortly after that, or shortly before that, I forget, there's a shot of like a dragon getting cut like this bisected vertically, and then you see like the inside, and it's just like a shade of red, a shade of like red and gray. I'm like, boring, so boring, lame. And I haven't even talked about the CG. Holy shit, the CG is terrible. It's fucking atrocious. The color design is fucking atrocious. There was this, the action scene ended with this fucking Technicolor vomit that made me like, that made my eyes hurt. And I knew the color design was going to be terrible when this episode booted up, because, here's a pro tip. If you start a new anime, and everything's just, like, all gray tones for the first, like, opening shots, you don't have an anime with good color direction. It's just not going to have that. And it's just not good. Now, granted, after the this opening action scene where whoever gets reincarnated, it gets a little better, but not like significantly better. Like, I don't like this washed out gray color palette. It's gross and not fun to look at. And then the show just completely breaks my suspension of disbelief, where like he reincarnates in the body of like this like teenager who's wearing a white shirt and his throat has been slit and there's like blood all down his shirt, and he's just walking through what probably Shibuya or something, and like through crowds of people, and no one is paying attention to this kid whatsoever. Like, he's got fucking blood all the way down his shirt. Nobody's like dodging out of the way or giving him like side eyes or anything. It's fucking stupid. I hate this show.
Alright, Dead Mount Death Play is off the list, which means it's time for another end cap, and we're doing Heavenly Delusion. I have heard so many mixed things about this show. Well, I've heard mixed things about one particular episode of this show, but let's dive in.
Well, I'm going to open by paraphrasing something that Exa, one of my moots on Twitter, said about this, the ending of the series. It's rare for an anime to so effectively speedrun wasting everyone's time after building up so much goodwill over 11 and a half episodes. We'll get to that later, but I just finished all of Heavenly Delusion, and I think that about sums up my general thoughts. Really fucking good for the first 11 and a half episodes. And then not. But yeah, this was the big new IP of the season, big heavy hitting thriller with some really strong animation talent behind that. I want to get to that right now. This was a really fucking phenomenal looking series. I was questionable at the beginning because I think like the first 2 episodes have some like iffy tracking shots in them, but aside from that, like the fucking everything about this is so damn good. It is crisp and polished, incredible color design that is just so vibrant and vivid. The world, this basically post-apocalyptic world feels so real and lived in instead of just like kind of a it feels like a step above a generic post-apocalyptic world. I really love the set dressing of all of it. The character animation is just so incredibly fluid and fun, and it's got all these different like flourishes and accents to everything. The more abstract imagery is so evocative and mesmerizing. This is kind of like the gold standard for what I think most anime should strive for, I guess. Or at least most anime in this like genre, I should say. In terms of like looking good and the types of ways that it looks good. This is just, I have basically no complaints about the animation. Even when it got like super goofy and a little bit more rough around the edges, I guess. I'm referring specifically to episode 9, which I believe was outsourced to Studio Trigger, and it just looked a hell of fun. It brought a little bit of a wacky edge that fit the setting pretty well, actually. So, was a big fan of that. And just the effects animation is so good. Everything about this series looks fucking incredible. And for a while, the narrative was just right alongside it there. Really strong characterization of our two leads, Kiriko and Maru. They have, like, incredibly solid chemistry together. Even in some of the, like, very weird romantic, not romantic moments. I found the back and forth between these two to be incredibly charming and endearing. So all the side characters are really fucking fun too on this like outside post-apocalyptic world. The plot line with Usami and who I presume was his lover at one point, that episode fucking wrecked me. That was just some good shit. And the way it flirts with certain like political allegories is pretty interesting as well. Like we have this sort of, in that plotline specifically, we had this sort of anti-science group not understanding the science well. So that was pretty interesting. And then there's the other plot line that I haven't even mentioned so far in this fucking recording. The basically the academy plot line with these basically probably lab grown humans being educated in this isolated world away from the outside. The way that the narrative is like slowly building on that, and like what exactly is this? Where did this come from? Why does it exist? What exactly are they doing there? It was so great as like a thriller, being like, what exactly is going on here? While also weaving in some like, sometimes incompetence gets in the way of the best laid plans. Especially near the end, I found that to be a bit amusing. Although the ending of that plot line leaves a bit more questions open-ended than I was hoping for at the end of this season. Because, like, I don't think we've gotten a second Season 2 announcement yet. I don't think there's enough manga for a Season 2 announcement. So I might have to... Well, we'll see about that. But that was one of my big gripes about the ending of this, is that the amount of reveals at the ending and the way that everything was, like, conjoined together. Didn't really feel satisfying. Yeah, it didn't, like, pace out well, because we've had this, like, parallel story structure going for basically the entire series. We have Kiriko and Maru on the outside doing their adventures, trying to find these people from Kiriko's past, and then we have, like, the inside academy stuff running in parallel to each other. Supposedly they're going to meet at some point. They don't in this season. I didn't really expect them to meet in this season. It could have happened, but it didn't. But just the series of events on how some of the students from the academy end up leaving, it felt a little jarring, I guess. A little underwhelming in certain ways. It just felt clunky, I guess. But that's not why I really hate the ending of the show. So, before I get to that, I do think that so one of the lead characters, Kiriko, is basically had his brain transplanted into his sister's body somehow. We don't know how yet. That has not been revealed. Oh, that's another thing I would have liked, that would have been good to reveal in this season finale. That would have been, like, at least a little bit satisfying. But no, so I do like how the story kind of plays with that idea, and, like, what does gender even mean, really? So it doesn't go super deep into it, but it's just a fun little idea for it to play with. It is not like Onimai levels of gender, but it's there. And then episode 12 happened, and we just get this super evil rape scene, with basically no justification behind it. There is the faintest hints of the idea that the rapist, Robin, this person that Kiriko has been trying to find this whole time. So the brother's name is Haruki and the sister's name was Kiriko, and it's implied that Robin was in love with Kiriko. I think that's what was implied, or that they had a relationship before Haruki's brain was put into Kiriko's body. If that was the case, why not, like, bring that up? Why not be, like, I was expecting, like, because I basically knew this was going to happen because of Twitter discourse from 6 months ago, but I was expecting, like, a sort of a ramp up to that. It'd be like him kind of pleading with Kiriko to essentially use her body, I guess. But no, we kind of just skip that step and just go straight to, I'm a bad guy and I'm gonna rape you. And I'm gonna make you, the brother's brain, look as I rape your sister's body. Nope. Nah, fam. Like, no explanation for that whatsoever. Yeah, maybe we'll get more explanation in a potential season 2, but right now, it's totally unexplained, and totally unsatisfying, and lame, and bad, and icky. This is a weird place to bring this up, but I also just found, just as a side note, I did like, in general, how this series, like, treated sex. Like, it just treated it as a thing that's normal that people do. Rape scene aside. Like, with the innkeeper, like, I think that was, like, episode 6 or something. I thought that was a pretty kind of funny turn of events. Funny is a weird way to phrase that. But, yeah, rape scene. So, that happens. We get no explanation. And then he just keeps her, like, tied up in his bedroom at this facility for, like, 2 days. So, presumably, has raped her several times by that point. Then Maru shows up and saves the day. And this was something else I didn't realize until afterwards, is Kiriko gets over it real fast. Like, it's like one speech from Maru, and then everything's good again. Maybe in future material it comes back as triggering moments, I guess. But man, they really sped run that, huh? That was not great. Man, that really, man, that last episode and a half really killed a lot of my interest in this show, because otherwise it was just so good. This was just such a cool world to inhabit. The monster designs are so interesting and terrifying, and the way that they work is really cool. I want to know more about how Maru's power works. I love that there's just weed everywhere. I just think it's fucking hilarious, because I'm like, you know what, yeah, if the apocalypse happened, yeah, I would definitely want to be stoned out of my mind the whole time. That makes sense that there would be weed everywhere. So I'm conflicted on this. I don't know how to rate this, but I'm gonna have to eventually, as soon as I stop talking. But like, I guess I would still recommend this show, maybe, with the caveat that the ending is not good. I will try out a season 2 if it happens. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but I will try it out. Yeah. Do I have anything else to say about this one? Oh, and cause see, even like thematically, it has some like good ideas to it. Like, I really like how it treats death in this. It actually treats death with a lot of weight, despite the fact that this is a very brutal post-apocalyptic setting. When people die, like, people like feel things. And also the gore is really good in comparison to, I think I tried out Death Mount Deathplay right before this, as opposed to that shitty show. Like, the gore in this is really fucking good. It is brutal and gruesome and graphic. Like, you see fucking brains spilling out of a bear at one point. I was like, damn. Like the gore is really good. The action scenes are really good. There's so much good in this that is ruined by this ending that I hope will be unruined in the future. I guess that is my final say on the matter.
Alright, Heavenly Delusion is done. I have decided I'm going to put it right in here in the 15th spot for now, with a strong 7. It could... that ending, I really don't know, because I loved the show so much before that ending, and now I'm just like, it's fine. But, yeah, so I'm just going to balance it out and say it's a 7. Second season could fix it. We'll see.